You ever go out of your way to do something romantic, only to find out you were the punchline of a joke you didn't even know you were in? That was me, standing outside a luxury hotel, holding a gift bag in one hand and a pit in my stomach, as I realized I was about to walk into something that would change my life forever. I had planned a romantic birthday surprise for my wife. Turns out, she had planned something too, but I wasn't on the guest list. For 6 years, I believed I was one of the lucky ones. Married to a woman I adored, living a life people envied, feeling like I had everything figured out. Jessica and I met in college, hit it off instantly, and built a relationship that felt easy. She was brilliant, ambitious, charming, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone love her within minutes. And she had picked me. At least, that's what I thought. Jessica worked in event management, which meant long hours, networking, and traveling for high-profile clients. It was part of the deal, and I never questioned it. She had late nights, last-minute business trips, emergency client meetings that pulled her away for entire weekends. I told myself it was just part of being married to someone with a demanding career. I trusted her. Until I didn't. Lately, something had felt off. Not in a dramatic, movie-style way. No lipstick on the collar, no mysterious perfume, no secretive phone calls in the middle of the night. It was more subtle than that. The way she'd pull away just slightly when I kissed her. The way she'd say, "just tired," when I asked if everything was okay. The way her phone was always face down. Then came her birthday. Jessica told me she had to fly out for a last-minute work event and that we'd celebrate when she got back. I was disappointed, but I didn't push. I was the supportive husband, after all, but something in the back of my mind just wouldn't sit right. So I did something I had never done before. I decided to surprise her. I booked a flight, packed a bag, and planned to show up at her hotel with flowers, a bottle of her favorite wine, and a night she'd never forget. Turns out, I was right. She would never forget that night. Just not for the reasons she expected. I sat in the airport terminal, my fingers drumming against my knee, my mind running in circles. The flight was boarding soon, but I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about Jessica, about the way she had smiled at me before leaving, about how easily she had kissed me goodbye, like there wasn't a single thing wrong. I wanted to believe I was overreacting, that I was just being paranoid, that I'd walk into her hotel room, she'd be thrilled to see me, and I'd feel like an idiot for ever doubting her. But deep down, I already knew. The feeling in my gut wasn't just suspicion. It was certainty. The flight was short, but it felt like forever. I stared out the window, watching the clouds, trying to talk myself out of what I was about to do. What if I was wrong? What if I showed up and embarrassed myself? What if this was all in my head? But the second I stepped off that plane, something in me shifted. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was focused. I needed to know the truth, and whatever it was, I was ready to face it. I grabbed my bag, took a cab to the hotel, and walked through the lobby with purpose. The place was beautiful, 5-star luxury, chandeliers, marble floors, the kind of place you don't stay unless you're celebrating something. The front desk clerk gave me a polite nod as I passed, completely unaware that I was about to walk into the worst night of my life. I already knew Jessica's room number. She had told me when she left, not thinking I'd ever need to use it. I took the elevator up, my hands tightening around the handles of the gift bag. My heart wasn't even racing anymore. It was just steady, cold, ready. I reached the door and paused. This was it. The moment where everything could either snap back into place or completely fall apart. I knocked. Silence. Then, shuffling. A few seconds later, the door opened a crack, just enough for Jessica to peek out, her eyes wide with shock, her body halfway blocking the opening. She didn't step aside. She didn't smile. She didn't look happy to see me. And that was all I needed to know. "Ben?" Her voice was tight, forced, too controlled, like she was trying to hold something back. What are you doing here?" I tilted my head, scanning her face, her tense posture. I could see the wheels turning in her head, could almost hear her scrambling for a lie, for an excuse. But before she could say anything else, before she could spin some ridiculous story, I caught a glimpse of something behind her. A suit jacket, draped over the back of a chair. Not hers. Not mine. Something inside me went ice cold. She must have seen it in my face, because she suddenly tried to step outside, pulling the door behind her, blocking my view. But it was too late. I pushed forward, just enough to catch a flash of movement inside the room. A shadow, a person, a man, and just like that, everything clicked. The hesitation, the lies, the last-minute business trip on her birthday. Jessica wasn't here for work. She was here with him. And now? She was about to regret everything. Jessica's entire body went stiff. She stood in the doorway like a human barricade, her hand gripping the doorframe so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She wasn't letting me in, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. Because behind that door, inside that perfectly decorated, luxury hotel suite, was the one thing that would confirm everything I had already started to piece together. I didn't need to go inside. I already knew. But Jessica? She wasn't ready for this. "Ben, you shouldn't be here," she said, her voice thin, controlled, like she was holding back a scream. The forced smile, the nervous shift in her stance. It was all so obvious now. How had I not seen it before? I wasn't angry. Not yet. Because anger is for people who still have something left to lose. And me? I had already lost her. So I just smiled. Calm. Collected. Like a man who already had all the power in the room. Move. It was one word. Soft. Direct. Undeniable. And that's when it happened. The crack. Jessica flinched. Just for a second. But it was enough. She took a half step back, her grip on the door weakening, and that's when I pushed through. She tried to stop me. Her hand shot out, but she wasn't fast enough. I was already inside. And the moment I stepped into that room, her entire world collapsed. The first thing I saw was him. A man, mid-30s, athletic build, standing near the bed like he was trying to disappear. His dress shirt was unbuttoned, just enough to confirm that this wasn't some innocent business meeting. His hair was a little too messy, his expression a little too panicked. He looked at me like a raccoon caught in a kitchen, guilty, frozen, and desperate for an escape. But the thing is, there was no way out. Jessica let out a shaky breath behind me. The sound of someone realizing, too late, that they had made the biggest mistake of their life. I turned to her. Her eyes were darting between me and her lover, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't decide which excuse to spit out first. But there was no explanation for this. Not one she could say with a straight face. The air in the room was thick, tense, heavy with the weight of her crumbling lies. And then, I laughed. Not loud, not hysterical, just a low, amused chuckle. Because the reality of the situation was so ridiculous, so painfully cliché, that I almost felt bad for her. Almost. I dropped the gift bag onto the bed. The one I had brought for her. The one with the bottle of wine. The handwritten card. The stupid little birthday gift I had picked out weeks ago, thinking it would make her smile. And then I turned to him. He was still frozen. Like he thought if he didn't move, I wouldn't see him. Like if he stood still enough, he could erase himself from this disaster. "Don't let me interrupt," I said, my voice smooth, calm, cutting through the air like a blade. "This is your room too, right?" Jessica let out a tiny, broken noise. The kind someone makes when they realize they've lost. I didn't yell, didn't scream, didn't demand answers. Because there was nothing left to say. I just smiled one last time, turned around and walked out. And the best part? I took the hotel key with me. Because Jessica? She didn't get to lock the door behind me and pretend none of this happened. No, this was her mess to clean up. I wasn't done. Not even close. Walking out of that hotel room, leaving Jessica standing there like a guilty child caught sneaking cookies before dinner, that wasn't enough. Because here's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just happen in silence. It doesn't happen in the shadows, tucked away behind locked doors. It explodes. And I was about to make sure Jessica felt every single aftershock. I marched straight back down to the lobby, my grip tightening around the stolen keycard, my mind racing through every single humiliating excuse I knew she was about to throw my way. I could already hear her voice in my head. "It's not what it looks like. I can explain. It was a mistake." No, there was no explaining this. There was no misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. This was a choice. And now? She was going to face it. The elevator ride down was quick, but not quick enough. I could feel my own pulse in my ears, my jaw tightening with every passing second. By the time the doors slid open, I had already made my decision. I wasn't leaving quietly. Jessica wasn't getting to bury this and move on like nothing happened. No, she was about to be exposed. I stormed back into the hotel lobby, my voice calm but boiling underneath. The concierge looked up, startled, as I approached. I slid the keycard across the counter, meeting his confused stare with a sharp, deliberate smirk. "Do me a favor," I said, my voice just loud enough to carry. "Cancel the rest of my wife's stay. She won't be needing it anymore." The poor guy blinked. He didn't know what to do. His eyes darted between me and the keycard, and I could almost see the internal struggle, customer service training versus the absolute chaos unfolding in front of him. Then, as if on cue, Jessica came barreling out of the elevator. She was breathless, disheveled, her face a mask of pure panic. "Ben, stop, just let me explain." Her voice cut through the lobby, drawing attention. Good, because now people were watching. I turned around, slowly, deliberately, letting her see the absolute lack of sympathy in my face. "You want to explain?" I gestured toward the bystanders, hotel guests, staff, people sipping overpriced cocktails at the bar, now all turning to watch the unfolding disaster. "Go ahead, Jessica. Tell them. Tell them why your husband flew across the country for a surprise visit, only to find you in a hotel room with some guy who looked like he just got out of bed with you." Her eyes darted around, realizing too late that we were in public, that this wasn't a private argument behind closed doors, that she couldn't control this narrative. Her voice dropped. "Please, not here." I laughed, loudly, the kind of laugh that wasn't amusement, but victory. "Oh no, sweetheart. We are doing this here. You weren't worried about privacy when you were sneaking around, were you?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then did something truly pathetic. She reached for my hand, as if physical contact could undo this, as if a single touch could erase the image of her standing in that hotel room, looking at me like I was the problem. I yanked my hand back, and then the boyfriend finally appeared. He must have been hoping Jessica could smooth things over, but now he was realizing she couldn't, because there was no smoothing this over. He stepped forward, trying to act casual, trying to act like this wasn't a complete disaster for him, too. And that's when I snapped. I closed the distance between us in 3 strides, stepping straight into his space, forcing him backward until his back hit the concierge desk. "You," I said, my voice dropping to something dangerous. "You just made the worst mistake of your life." His bravado cracked, just a little. His jaw tensed, but his shoulders were stiff, nervous, uncertain, waiting to see if I was about to throw a punch. I didn't. Not yet. Because I had something way better than violence. I leaned in, lowering my voice just enough for only him to hear. "You might want to call your wife," I whispered. His face drained of color. And that was better than any punch I could have thrown. Jessica let out a strangled noise, stepping between us, her hand on his chest like she was trying to protect him. And in that moment, it hit her. She wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. Because if there's one thing cheaters never consider, it's the aftermath. They think they're invincible, that their secrets will stay hidden, that no one will find out. But now everyone knew. And this was just the beginning. Jessica's breath was coming in sharp, panicked gasps now, her hand still pressed against her lover's chest like she could somehow shield him from the wrecking ball I had just sent crashing through their little fantasy world. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at him. At his face, at the sheer horror settling into his features. Because he knew what I had just done. I hadn't just exposed their affair. I had just set fire to his entire life. Because the moment I whispered those words, "you might want to call your wife," he knew. His secret was out. And I wasn't just walking away with my dignity intact. I was walking away with everything. The hotel lobby had fallen completely silent. People were pretending not to stare, but they weren't very good at it. The bartender was wiping the same glass over and over, his movements frozen, completely transfixed by the real-life soap opera playing out in front of him. A couple sitting in the lounge had stopped their conversation entirely, their eyes darting between me, Jessica, and the man whose life I had just torn apart with a single sentence. And then, his phone rang. Jessica flinched, visibly. Her body jerked, like her brain had just caught up to what was happening, and in that split second, I saw it all click for her. She had never thought this far ahead. She had never thought about what happened when the secret got out. She had spent months, maybe years, thinking she was so clever, so careful, so untouchable. And now? Now she was standing in the ruins of everything she had built. The guy, Mr. Homewrecker himself, stared at the screen, his jaw tightening, his face pale. He didn't answer, because he already knew who it was. He didn't need to see the name. His wife was calling. Jessica whipped around to face me, her face red, her eyes wild with fury, desperation, the realization that she had completely lost control of this situation. Ben. I smiled. Calm, cold, cruel. Don't, I said, shaking my head, my voice barely above a whisper, but sharp enough to cut through the tension like a knife. And then I did something she never expected. I pulled my wedding ring off my finger. Right there, in the middle of the hotel lobby, in front of everyone, I held it between my fingers for a moment, just long enough to let her see it, to let her understand, to let her feel it. And then, I dropped it. It hit the marble floor with a soft, metallic clink, rolled once, and then came to a stop. Jessica stared at it, like it was the last piece of her old life slipping through her fingers. Because it was. I didn't wait for her to say anything. There was nothing left for her to say. I turned, walked straight past the hotel staff, who were definitely not paid enough for this level of drama, and pushed open the doors to the front entrance. The warm night air hit me like a wave, but it wasn't just the temperature that felt different. Everything felt different. I wasn't leaving that hotel the same person who had walked in, the man who had boarded that plane earlier that day, the one who thought he was flying out to surprise his wife, to bring romance into their marriage, to make her feel special on her birthday. That man was gone. I wasn't broken. I wasn't devastated. I was free. Behind me, I could hear Jessica's voice rising, frantic, desperate. I could hear her lover arguing with her, his own panic settling in as the weight of what had just happened came crashing down on him. I could hear his phone ringing again and again, his wife probably waiting for an answer he would never be able to give. But me? I just kept walking. Because Jessica? She was the one left picking up the pieces now. And the best part? I had nothing left to lose. I didn't look back. I didn't give her the satisfaction of even a final glance. No hesitation, no second thoughts, no lingering doubts. Just the sound of my footsteps fading away as I left her standing there, drowning in the wreckage of the life she had so carelessly set on fire. Maybe she thought I would turn around. Maybe she thought she could still fix this, still manipulate me into believing it was all some terrible misunderstanding. But the reality had already sunk in. Jessica wasn't just losing me. She was losing everything. I walked out of that hotel and into a cab, the cold leather against my back feeling more comfortable than the last 6 years of my marriage. I could still hear her voice in my head, frantic, desperate, begging for control she no longer had. But as the cab pulled away, I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel anger. I felt free. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of lies, wasn't second-guessing, wasn't playing detective in my own marriage. I was done. And Jessica? Her nightmare was just beginning. By the time my plane landed the next morning, my phone was already flooded with messages. Jessica, Ben, please, just talk to me. Jessica, I don't know what to do. Jessica, I made a mistake, but we can fix this. You and me. We can figure it out. Jessica, please don't let this be the end of us. The sheer audacity of it almost made me laugh. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she admit what she did. It was all desperation, all damage control, all trying to pull me back into the world where she thought she could keep me as an option while she lived out her double life. I didn't reply. I let her messages sit there, unread, unanswered, like echoes in an empty room. By noon, the tone had shifted. Jessica, how could you humiliate me like that? Jessica, you didn't have to do that in public. Jessica, you're cruel. I hope you regret this someday. Regret? I didn't regret a single thing. But Jessica? She was drowning in it. Because while she was busy sending desperate messages, her world was crumbling from every direction. Her little boyfriend? The one she threw our marriage away for? Turns out, his wife wasn't as oblivious as he thought. She had been suspicious for months, and the second she got my call, she didn't just confront him. She destroyed him. She kicked him out, filed for divorce, took the house, froze his accounts, and let every mutual friend know exactly what kind of man he was. He went from a wealthy, married executive to a broke, couch-surfing disgrace in less than 48 hours. And Jessica? She had hitched her entire future to a sinking ship. Her job? Gone. Word spread fast, faster than she could do damage control. Her boss had always valued discretion, and when whispers of a very public cheating scandal involving a married client surfaced, it was over. She got the call 2 days later. Termination. Effective immediately. No severance. No glowing recommendations. Just a cold, professional reminder that her reputation was now in the gutter. Her home? Mine. I had already met with my lawyer before flying out, and because the house was in my name, she had exactly 30 days to pack her things and get out. No negotiations, no extensions, no discussions. She had built a life of comfort, of stability, of security, and now? Now she was about to lose it all. And the best part? She had no one left. The man she risked everything for had vanished into his own disaster. Her friends? Most of them weren't even really hers. They were ours. And when the truth came out, most of them sided with me. Even her family, the ones who had always thought she was untouchable, saw her for what she really was. Her messages stopped after a few days. The silence was louder than anything she could have said. But from what I heard, Jessica never really recovered. She bounced between apartments, never really settling. Her career never fully got back on track. She tried dating, but trust is hard to earn when your name is already attached to a scandal. She thought she was smart, thought she was careful, thought she would never get caught. But in the end, she was just another cheater who thought she was untouchable. And me? I moved on. I built a life without her, one that wasn't built on lies, on doubt, on waiting for the next betrayal to come crashing down. And every now and then, I'd hear from someone who ran into her, someone who mentioned how much she had changed, how she wasn't the same person anymore, how she looked lost. Good. Because Jessica's biggest mistake wasn't cheating. It was thinking I would stay.